Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Man, the Father, the Legend. I am your host, David Ford, and I have to say, it is great to be back. Now, life took a little bit of a turn, and we had to kind of move in a different direction, but we are back. I have some great conversations that I can't wait to share with you all today. In the podcast, but today I want to share with you guys something that's been on my mind, something that I've experienced, something that I encountered in being a father, and I'm going to share a little bit more throughout the next wave of interviews and the next wave of conversations, just kind of by myself, if that's okay with you guys. I mean, it's not like, we have really a choice or anything like that. But I appreciate you all for staying tuned in and staying active and listening and trying to aid in these conversations, because I think they are really good conversations about fatherhood, being a husband, being a man, all of those things in general. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about something that I've experienced with Junior. And it's an interesting story, actually, that we're going to get to in a little bit. And I really want to question the limitations that we kind of put on our own children and how we as fathers can kind of break that mold and not put limitations or even try to project certain avenues and paths. Now, I know a lot of parents and many parents, most parents, they have ideas and views and visions for their children, and I want them to be like this when they get older, or I want them to do this or certain things. But sometimes that can get in the way of a child discovering themselves, and a lot of times it kind of exposes us from what our fears are, or what our limitations are, or what the things that we wanted to do in our own lives that we just haven't done, or and it shows up in a vast majority of ways. So I just want to share a story and share some thoughts about it. So I'm going to come back after these commercial messages with that story. And yeah, you're tuned in to The Man, the Father, the Legend.
Your brand is operating on your behalf 24 hours a day, and brand consistency builds confidence. At 1030 Designs, we help you build brand confidence by creating cohesive logos, social media posts, websites, and marketing materials so your audience knows who you are at a glance. We're here to help, and we're ready to get busy for you. Visit us at 1030designs.com today. That's 1030designs.com.
What does it mean to be woke and free?
It means to be woke, educated, and enlightened, and you are unapologetically free to share your opinion while hearing out others, whether they agree with you or not. What does woke and free mean to you?
It means digging down to what's really going on, not accepting information just because you are told it is the truth. It is waking up to the idea that there is a story behind the story. It is freeing yourself from the chains of control. How does one become woke and free?
Make the decision. Commit to a woke and free lifestyle and never look back. Subscribe to the educational and entertaining phenomenon of a podcast at wokenfree.com, WOKENFREE.com, and you will tune in every week for Woke and Free Wednesday for an unforgettable show you can't get enough of.
Woke and Free is more than a podcast. It is a way of life.
Feeling world-weary, disheartened by politics, enraged by racism? I'm Michelle Myers, and in my podcast, Mind Your Margins, I draw on my experience as a professor, activist, and poet to foster a space for listeners where it's humanly possible to make humanity possible. Each episode, I discuss difficult topics focused on marginalized identities and encourage mindfulness and self-care. As an Asian American woman, I emphasize the experiences of people of color, especially Asian American Pacific Islanders, immigrants and the children of immigrants, and multiracial, multicultural perspectives. I hope you'll join me.
We are back with the man, the father, the legend. I'm your host, David Ford, and I just have this quick story I want to share with you. So one day, not too long ago, it was maybe a few weeks ago, Junior and I, we were sitting in his playpen, and sometimes we just go there, we just chill. Maybe we'll watch a little bit of TV, we'll read a book, play some games, or really he's playing the games and I'm watching him play the games, and he thinks I'm participating, but I'm not really participating. But you know the little cheat sheets that we do as parents and as fathers. And so the playpen is in close proximity of a dresser, and there's a lot of different things on that dresser, hair products that my wife has, combs, brushes, and stuff. But it's at an elevated distance away from the playpen that you can't just easily just reach up. I mean, we can as adults, but a kid can't easily reach up. But Junior, he tries to reach up to that desk and pull whatever off that desk. He learned how to comb his hair, so he likes to comb his hair. So whenever he sees a comb, he reaches for the comb a lot of times. And obviously you don't want them to just go on that desk and grab anything. But this particular day, he was trying to reach for the comb on the desk, and I'm not really freaking out yet because he can't reach it. And he kept looking at me. He turns and looks at me, and then he'll try to reach again. And you hear him trying to really like reach and stretch his body to grab the comb, but he was never able to catch it or grab it. So he goes to the other side of the playpen and he grabs his toy piano or xylophone or whatever the thing is. I'm a musician, but I don't know if this is piano or not. I don't know. But it's a little like a keyboard-esque type of toy. He never plays it, but he likes to put it to the other side closer to the desk and stand on top of the keyboard or the piano to grab whatever it is on the desk. And so he goes, and I stop myself. I just watch for a second. And yeah, he goes to the other side. He grabs his piano, he puts it down, and he stands on top of the piano. Then he realizes he's a little too far away, so he gets off. He pushes it a little bit closer to the desk. Then he stands on tops of it again, and he's really reaching for this comb. And he's getting closer and closer and closer, and he's still like inching over there. He's still trying to stretch his body. He's still trying to get a couple more inches for him to grab this comb. And so much, I had to fight the urge so much to say stop, because I've been reading about, try to like positive reinforcements or redirect them into different areas, and not saying no as much, not saying stop as much. I mean, so I've been trying to kind of implement that in my own parenting style. And so I wasn't trying to say stop, but then I also had to just sit there and think, why do I want him to stop? Right? Why do I actually want him to stop? Do I want him to stop because I just want him to stop personally, because I don't want him to do that? I want him to play with another toy or watch super simple songs or whatever else that we could be doing. Or do I want him to stop because he could be hurt? Do I want him to stop because I could possibly be projecting what I think his limitation should be? I had to really think about that. One, I was completely enamored by his tenacity, right? He never stopped trying to reach that comb. He kept trying, and no matter how many times he would inch and fail to reach it or fail to grab it, he still kept going after it. But then again, I wanted to think and question myself, why, Dave, why do you want him to stop this? Why do you want him to do something else? Are you projecting something possibly? Maybe this is just not a good example. Maybe you're thinking about this and say, no, you're probably doing what a normal parent would do and say, and try to stop him. But also you could just be trying to place limitations on the child. And so I started reading articles about exploring children and letting kids explore. And I saw this really cool article that had four reasons to let your child explore through This Rough World. It was published in April of 2016 from smartparenting.com. And the third point, which is what I want to kind of talk about a little bit more, is it says exploration helps your kid develop his instincts. When you let your child explore, he is able to find out about his physical limitations. He also learns about healthy self-regulating habits, like making his own decisions and choices, which toys to play with, where to go, and what to do. Making choices is one of the most fundamental things your child needs to learn. Making choices is one of the most fundamental things your child needs to learn. But what choices do they make? Well, I mean, we make choices every day. What are we going to wear? What are we going to eat? What are we going to do for a living? And our children are also making decisions, making choices, or learning how to make choices. Now he's one, so obviously he has a lot of learning to do. He has a lot of exploration. He has a lot of questioning that still is waiting for him. But sometimes as parents and as fathers, at least in my experience, we try to control the actual exploration process for our children. Try to control what they should be questioning, or what they should be trying to figure out how to do, or what to do, or why you're going to do, or whatever that thing is. Because at our natural state, we all just want to know why, or how come. Various different questions and a variety of different points of particular interests that we as human beings have on a daily basis. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a barber, and he said to me one day, he said his son is going to learn how to cut hair. I said, well, does he really have a choice? He said, no. I said, well, why not? He said, because I'm a barber, he's going to learn how to cut hair. Even if he doesn't want to be a barber, he's going to learn how to cut hair. And I looked at him, I said, well, why? Why does he, if he doesn't want to cut hair, or if you can depict that or pick it out at an early age, or at least let him ask you to teach him, why would you force that onto him? He said, I'm the man, I'm the father, and if I'm cutting hair, he needs to learn how to cut hair. He needs to learn how to make money for himself. And it just made me think about, what are we actually offering up, or what's the purpose of being a parent? What is the purpose of being a father? What is the goal? Is it to push them towards certain fields and interests, or is it to just expose them to different fields and interests and teach them how to make responsible decisions and make responsible choices? I would argue the latter. I would argue, in my 18, 19 months of being a father, that perhaps the purpose of being a father is not to force your children into certain fields or interests or ways of thinking or perspectives or ways of living life. But maybe it is to teach them how to be responsible, respectful, how to have some sense of urgency and agency over themselves, not to be controlled by other people's opinions on them, not to fall victim of peer pressure, how to be strong individuals, not just in the physical sense, but in the mental sense, right? To not be easily swayed by different perspectives and viewpoints and opinions, and to really dive into what that child really wants to do on their own. Now, obviously, there are very clear things that you do not want your children to do, or at least I will hope not. Like, you don't want them to be criminals. Obviously, you don't want them to be violent, angry, or you don't want them, or I shouldn't say you don't want them to be angry, but you don't want them to use their anger in a negative way, whether that be verbally abusive, physically abusive, just completely closed off and not really available to their friends or loved ones or stuff like that. Obviously, so those are things that I think that just any decent parent should not want for their child. But other things like their career choices or their relationship choices, they that can kind of get tricky. They can kind of get tricky because you may not want them to be with that person, but if they want to be with that person, should they just listen to you or should they have that mind of their own? Just like if that kid wants to comb off of the desk, should they not have it because you don't want them to have it, or should they just have it? And I had to think to myself. I know I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but I had to think to myself, really, what damage is happening if Junior has this comb in his hand? I'm in the playpen. It's not like I'm in the other room or I'm not in arm's reach of him. It's not like he's going to get hurt because I'm watching him. What is it about Junior putting that piano in a position where he can stand on it and potentially grab the comb? The first thing I thought about in terms of why I didn't want it to happen, because I felt like I did not have control over the situation or what he was doing, right? I said no, or did I say no? Actually say no? Well, I wanted to say no. I didn't want him to do that. And so he was doing something that I didn't want him to do. Not he was doing something that was harmful, hurtful, or potentially endangering or just completely defiant. He just wanted to grab the comb. Is that enough for parents to interject and just completely stop their kids from doing something just because you do not want them? I could tell you one thing. There is a generation of kids. Now I don't know any statistics behind this, but I'm pretty sure I have confidence in this. There is a generation of young adults who ended up doing stuff that they probably wouldn't have done partly because they were always told not to do something, or when they were told not to do something, there was no actual reasoning behind it. There was no actual rationale or thought process. It was a control mechanism. A control mechanism. Why do we want to have that much control over other people? Now, this is a topic that is very kind of a huge spark of debate, because on one end you want them to have that agency, but also on the other end you are responsible for that child. So where do you draw the line? When do you say me as a father has to take over, or me as a parent has to take? I'm going to keep it as father because this is the man, the father, the legend. Yeah. When do you as a father just take over and take control? And when do you say, hey, you know what? You can just explore. You can figure it out. I have a friend in high school, and I know I like stories. I like stories. I like to tell stories because it helps me conceptualize thought processes, and it helps me kind of really grasp an understanding of life and what's going on. So a few years ago, I have a friend who taught himself how to do a backflip, and we were in high school, and he was sharing me the story. I said, well, how did you teach yourself how to do a backflip? He said, I saw somebody doing the backflip, and I asked my mom to teach me how to do a backflip or take me to a class or gymnastics class, what have you. And she said no. And he said, well, I'm going to learn how to do a backflip anyway. He tries to do a backflip and cracks his head open, blood gushing everywhere, blah, blah. It's by a miracle that he didn't lose his life off of this. And I said, well, but that in the final product was, well, after that, he realized, well, there's nothing to be fearful of. So he just kept learning. He kept doing backflips once he healed, and then he learned how to do a backflip. Now, I really hope that story was true, and I really hope that I shared it in its most accurate light, because if it wasn't, I'll be really disappointed. Disappointed in myself more so. Because, yeah. So I said, well, how did your mom react? And he's like, well, I don't really remember. All I remember is she told me no. And I never really had a reason why. And because I never had a reason why, he said it wasn't until I got older that I realized, one, she didn't know how to do a backflip, and two, she didn't have the money to send me to a class to learn how to do a backflip. But at the time, all I heard was no. So he's like, well, I'm not going to just take no. I'm going to learn how to do a backflip. So I'm thinking, could that have been prevented? Could that have been avoided? A kid cracking his head wide open. Now, again, these could very much be wild examples. This could be very much me just pulling a rabbit out the hat and trying to make something out of nothing. It could very much be that, or it could possibly be these are examples, everyday life examples that we should take to challenge us as fathers and how we are actually being fathers. Now, I'm learning a lot of things. Every day is another lesson. Junior is super active. Actually, I jokingly asked my wife the other day, I said, is it normal for an 18-month-old kid to be this active? Because I feel like he's more active than any other 18-month-old I've seen. And she's looking at me like, what are you talking about? Every 18-year-old acts like this. And so I say that to say, I'm learning more and more about Junior every day, but I'm also learning about myself and perhaps being exposed to what I have always feared in life. What I have always feared. Now, I'm going to blow a feather out of a lot of people's hat. So make sure you're sitting tight when you listen to this, when you hear this. My wife finally got through to me to kind of not be less aggressive per se, but be a little bit more understanding and compassionate when dealing with Junior. Sometimes I just feel like I just had terrible patience. And sometimes I look at him and I'm like, wow, I am jealous. Not jealous because of who he is, but I'm jealous of how he's going to think about the decisions he's made. Because I think that I made a lot of decisions not to do certain things because I feared if I could do it, or if I'm letting somebody down, or if my parents would agree to it. If my parents would agree to it or co-sign, or would they want me to do this? I reflect on that a lot sometimes. And I look at Junior sometimes and say, man, I don't think he's going to have those thought processes. I don't think he's going to question whether or not he should do something to the extent of that I did. Because again, it wasn't necessarily, oh, is this harmful? Is this hurting anybody? Is it hurting me? I didn't think of it like that. Some decisions I made, it was, will my parents approve of this? But now that also introduces another concept in which a lot of kids, a lot of children, a lot of young adults do not have that thought process or do not have that fear. And so they do almost anything they want. So again, I'm questioning, and I'm interested in everyone who's listening to respond. You can message on Instagram at manfatherlegend, or you can message me personally on my Instagram at David J. Ford. You can comment on a YouTube video if you're listening. You can comment on the Instagram. You can email Ford Production Company, who is hosting and the production team behind this entire podcast. So shout out to Ford Production Company, by the way. Where do we draw the line as fathers? Where do we say, I am going to either let you do this or not let you do this? Is it a general rule of thumb? Is it a blanketed thing like, okay, every single time something like this happens, use this quote or this mindset or this approach, or is it case by case? Because you can argue or debate whether or not this specific case applies to this larger concept that we're trying to bring about for our children. That's a good place to think about. That's a good thing to think about. That is a good way to challenge us as fathers. Now, we're just about done, and I just want to offer what I think is right now. What I think you should learn your children. You should really take the time to learn your children. Fathers, really take the time to learn your children. I know we are working to provide. I know we are working to protect. I know that we are working to provide. I know that we are working to protect. I'm saying that because sometimes it kind of gets blurred what the motive is of the father or the husband. Why are you working so much? Why are you always out so much? Because I'm trying to provide and I'm trying to protect, period. But take some time out to really invest in your children and learning them. Because when you learn them, when you learn what they're naturally kind of leaning towards or what they are trying to do with their lives or make of their lives or what have you, when you learn that, I think it's easier to place quote unquote limitations on them. Because now you're not coming from a perspective of, I just want you to do this because I said so. You're coming to this, I know you and I know what could potentially damage you. What do I mean by that? If my son is very, and I'm not saying that he is, if my son is very, very sensitive and he's easily offended, I may tell him or counsel him, hey, you shouldn't hang out with this particular person who's always making jokes about people, because you're going to be offended by that person. You know that you're going to be damaged in a sense. So how about you hang out with the people who are not as easy to crack a joke about you or do something like that. Or if you know that your child, or you have this idea that your child is a little thicker skinned, you may say, hey, don't hang out with that sensitive person, because that sensitive person may be offended by who you are or how you conduct yourself or how you are coming to be. Limitations, I think, is the purpose of this conversation. Where do we limit our children? Why do we limit our children? Why do we stop them from being who they could be? Do we stop them from being who they could be? Where we stopped from being who we could be. There's so many things to dissect about that, but I want to just offer to all the fathers who are listening, learn your children and let them explore. Be the parent, definitely be that guiding force, be that leader, be that person who is overseeing everything. But 9 times out of 10, if you can't think of a reason why you don't want them to do something, let them do it. If there's no rational reason as to why they shouldn't do something, what's the harm in letting them do it? I think that is the goal of parenting. Now, again, I'm 16 months into this, 18 months into it. I don't know. After he turns 1, like most fathers, I stop counting. The months last until he reached 12 months. After 12 months, I don't know how old he is. He ain't 2 yet, so that's all that matters in my eyes. But in my time being a parent, I think the purpose of this and the purpose of being a father, an effective father, is to learn your child and let them explore. I'm interested in what you think. Please write me, message me, comment on whatever you want to comment on the various social media outlets. Let's have this discussion, because I'm open to everything you have to say. This is going to wrap up this episode of The Man, the Father, the Legend. Be sure that you are following us and sharing all of this great content. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Instagram, or like us wherever you have to like us. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. I'm your host, David Ford, and we are going to have a great discussions. We're going to have great discussions moving forward that I want you guys to continue to join on. And we have some guest appearances and some guest interviews from some amazing people. Please make sure that you are looking for. Wait, what am I saying? Please make sure that you are on the lookout for all of these amazing interviews. Once again, this is The Man, the Father, the Legend. I'm your host, David Ford. We are signing out. Spread love, spread hope. Peace.